Have you noticed how some people just seem to capture your attention whenever you speak to them? You could be doing something mundane like having coffee, but you hang off their every word while they're speaking. That's because they've learnt the art of storytelling. Yes, being able to tell a story, to structure what you're saying in a way that it is compelling, will capture people's attention and keep them listening to you all the way through what you have to say. And the purpose of this video is to show you how you can tell good stories. So if this is your first time watching one of my videos, welcome. My name is Lawrence and I help people learn how to do better with their public speaking. Now we're talking about storytelling, and when we think about it, stories form everything in our lives. All the way back in time, people used to communicate the current affairs through stories. They would pass them down through generations so that people would know the history of their country or their family, and that they would know what's going on with the events of the day. And really, when somebody asks you, how are you? What have you been up to? They're asking for your most recent story. Tell them a little bit about your most current story. And the better you can frame that, the more interesting and compelling you will be. You can use storytelling to capture attention. It's really important, especially if we're going to do public speaking, do a presentation, or even just have one-on-one conversations, or even if you're doing some sort of marketing and you want to capture someone's attention, or even a YouTube video, if you do it like this. The better you can tell a story, the more compelling you are, the more interested people will be in what you have to say. The way we structure what we say also holds on to that attention. So we have to think about what we're going to say, think about the story, and we're going to get into that as we go through this video. Another reason why stories are so powerful is because it evokes emotion. You think about it, when you're watching the news and you see someone who's gone through some heartbreaking situation, maybe the death of a loved one in some tragic circumstance, doesn't your heart just bleed? When you're watching a movie and it's about some court case and some terrible injustice, don't you get all fired up with indignation? That's because these people who've created these bits of stories, they are capturing your attention and getting your emotions all stirred up so that you really want to find out what happens. It captivates you. And we can do exactly the same with our storytelling, even in our conversations in everyday life, but in our presentations, in our public speaking on stage. The better we can frame what we're saying, the more compelling we are to our audience. Now, I want to thank you for hanging out here today. I hope you're getting a lot of value from this video. And what I want to do is give you something to take away. Now, I have a one-page document, which is a PDF, all about the art of storytelling and how you can use it every time you're trying to craft a story for a presentation. You can use this PDF to be able to frame it exactly how you would want to. So if you go to www.the-speakersacademy.co.uk/storytelling or click the link in the description, you can download that free storytelling cheat sheet, and we'll get back now to the main meat of this video. Well, what are the key elements of a really good story for your story that you're going to tell? Well, you have to start with something really compelling. Grab the attention of the audience. Now, this doesn't have to be through linear storytelling. Although you want to include beginning, middle and end in any story that we tell, sometimes we can start in the middle or with a really good question. We can frame it in such a way to grab attention. Now, I have a video all about how to hook attention, and I'll link that down below or in a little card one side here for you to go and watch after this video. But really, this is about the hook. The hook of the story. You think about any movie or TV show you watch, they generally start with a hook. The big question, what is going on? That's how you get the attention. You want to make people curious in your story. Think if someone said, how are you? And you would go, oh, well, don't you want to know? You're automatically creating intrigue. Why wouldn't I want to know? It's the same when we tell a story in a presentation or in a public speaking environment. We need to create curiosity, and we do that with a hook. Now, we already said earlier on that emotion is really key to storytelling, and it's true, it's one of the main elements. The better we can tap into people's emotions, the better and more deeply we connect with them. Now, we think about this when we're giving a speech. If we want someone to feel loved, then we need to put love into our story. In some way, we need to connect on an emotional level. If we want to fire people up, then we need to put something, a story in there that does just that, that gets people all riled up. Maybe about why something is wrong, because then we know how we can fix it later on. So deeply connect with your audience by including good emotions, emotions that are relevant to the audience that you're speaking to. Another thing you can do is use body language. Again, body language is something that can really highlight what you have to say. If you're telling a story about how someone climbed one of the highest mountains in the world and they went through great pains and effort to do it, and they went all the way to the very top of the mountain, all of a sudden you can use volume, pitch and pace and body language to emphasize what you're saying. The more we move as we talk, the more people will be watching. Have you noticed this? When someone is not very captivating and they're talking, maybe they're holding their notes like this and talking to you, and they're not looking at you, they're not moving, they're very boring, that your attention wanders. And the next person who gets up and walks past, or a bird that flies past the window, it's going to take your attention away. If someone even twitches in front of you, maybe look at their phone, you are then looking at their phone rather than the person who's speaking. So we want to move, we want to emphasize things with our body, our face, we want to use our volume, pitch and pace and deliver our story in a way that really gets people involved. And another thing we can do, and this is quite important, is to think about the delivery in the sense of, have we practiced it well? Our delivery needs to be spot on. If you're telling a story, there's no point fumbling your way through it because you didn't really think it through and you haven't practiced it, and then you've got up on stage and you can't remember half of it. You've wasted an opportunity to really be impactful with what you have to say. So use that opportunity. The delivery needs to be spot on and practiced well, and practice everything. All your gestures, all your facial movements, your volume, your pitch, your pace, where you're going to emphasize certain words. Make sure you do that because it will attract attention and it will hold attention from your audience. And then they will take away what you have to say, remembering your story. Another thing we need to do is use really good descriptive language. Now, you might have noticed this if you've been reading a book. And you're reading your book and you think, you know what, this is boring. I'm not interested. That's because the language isn't capturing you. The descriptions of what's going on don't interest you. And the same is true. We could be telling a story that is relevant to the people we're speaking to. Maybe they really need to hear this story and they need to hear our presentation. But if the way we're describing our story isn't interesting, people will wander off in their mind because they don't care. We have to capture their attention by using language which helps them to form images in their mind. Help them to imagine what you're saying by using descriptive language in a way that captures their attention. So how should we structure the story we're writing then? Well, it doesn't have to be beginning, middle, end. Like I said earlier, the linear storytelling can sometimes be a little bit boring because we have to wait for the setup to be complete before we get to the conflict. Your story should include setup, conflict, and resolution. Those are three things that are key. And when you're giving a speech, sometimes you can bring the resolution later in the speech and you can mix and match things. But generally, if we start with the conflict, the question, the hook, then we can set things up a little bit more, giving a bit more detail, a bit more background. Because once you've got people's attention involved, they're happy to give you a little bit more time to explain what on earth you're talking about. So we need to do that first. Get them hooked. But don't forget, we must then set up the rest of the material after we've put in the curious hook. Then we have to get to a resolution. If you don't resolve your story through your presentation, then it leaves an open question, and people find that very distracting. Rather than listening to what you're saying, they're thinking, is he ever going to get round to finishing what he was talking about? How does this bit tie into that bit? And before you know it, they're not actually paying attention to what you're saying. They're too busy wondering things in their own mind. Something else which is really key to remember when you're structuring your story is that your presentation should be well connected to the story you're telling. There should be ways to see why you pick this story and why it flows in and out of the narrative. As you're talking, people need to understand, yeah, I get why he's saying these things. It works as a good illustration to make what you say memorable. Because the fact is, a good story will be taken away from them long after facts, figures and statistics, even if they are the most relevant things about what you're talking about. People need to have something to take away to jog their memory about what you were talking about. So if you can, as I say, bring your story into the main points and keep it clear, then that will really elevate your speech to the next level. Because that is something which is really hard to do. To keep the points connected and to keep the clarity as part of your speech is really hard work. So make sure you do that. Make sure you work hard on your stories. Don't just tell any story you think, because sometimes people do that. They'll tell a random story which has got nothing to do with what they are going to speak about. It's good, the story is good, but there's no connection. So if you really want to level up your public speaking, make sure you connect your story to the main points of what you're speaking about. Now, when you're delivering your story as part of your presentation, you want to work on the pitch, pace and volume of what you're saying. Your volume needs to be right, and you can use volume to emphasize what you want to say. When you're talking about your story, if something exciting is happening, you can raise your voice to really highlight what is going on. Or you might slow it down if there's a key moment, something that people need to take away. You can slow your pace. And your pitch is something that can be played with as well. When you're talking about someone who did something horrific, you can change your pitch to highlight and emphasize what you're saying. Again, using these methods of modulating your voice and the pace at which you're speaking can captivate people so well into what you have to say. Watch for this when you see other people speak, especially if they are really effective at storytelling. Watch how they use volume, pitch and pace to really emphasize the key moments in their stories. Now, there's a lot in this video that can help you, but you might be feeling a little overwhelmed. Don't worry. Storytelling takes practice. You're not going to be brilliant on your first attempt, but do give it a go. Try to weave something simple into what you're saying. When you're speaking to somebody, the next time you're having a conversation, try to tell a slightly better story. Try to use gestures and movements in the way that you speak. Try emphasizing things with your voice. Try mixing up the structure. Don't start at the beginning, start in the middle. Make sure that you try this out again and again and again. It won't be sorted the first time you try it, but over time, with a lot of practice, you can get great at storytelling. And don't forget, download that PDF for free. Get that storytelling cheat sheet, because you can use that whenever you're trying to craft a story to help you to be able to present what you're saying in a meaningful and an impactful way. I really hope you found benefit out of this video. If you have, hit the like button and please subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to be bringing more videos like this to you, which will help you in different aspects of public speaking. And together we can work on making sure that people hear the messages that we have to say.